Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Being with us so early. I'm Selena, and this is the alternate historical fiction track, where you will find programming for all of your historical or not so historical needs. We have donation bin right here, and we do also have the ball tonight. So, trying to remember what day it is. It is Sunday, right? Temporal Ball Art Decadence. The charity is Open Hand Atlanta. So, and all proceeds will be matched by DragonCon. And please, if you enjoy this, don't forget to rate this panel on the app. If you don't, let me know. Don't worry about it.
I like that honesty.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Hanako, and I am your moderator for this morning. Welcome to the Outlander book discussion panel. Just a reminder, we will be talking about all of the Outlander books, so if you do not want to be spoiled, you are in the wrong room on this early Sunday morning. I am the host of the Fandom Hybrid podcast. We discuss TV and film and mainly the fantasy, superhero, and genre TV fields. And Outlander is one of the shows that we started covering, with the most recent season. Book-wise, I am in the middle of Echo in the Bone, so I'm not fully caught up, but I am aware that I'm going to hear a lot of delicious details today, and I'm ready for it. I am going to let my panelists introduce themselves, tell us your name, just a brief tidbit about your Outlander experience, and if you are authors, which I think both of you are, you can go ahead and plug anything that you have going on right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Cross. This is my second year on the Outlander panel, and it is my favorite panel at DragonCon every year. I fills up all my excitement for this panel. I have done audiobooks, ebooks, and all of the TV show. I'm about where she is in the books, but I know what happens in the other books because I talk about Outlander all the time. So my friends and I are always discussing what's come and what's happening, and I leaf through the books. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I don't know if you've seen her books before, but they're not small. And I'm an author by profession. I write young adult fantasy novels with dragons and witches and magic.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Manifold. I'm also an author, and I am an Outlander fan from 1991 when they first came out, and they had the cover that she hated with the really red-haired Jamie, the mass market paperback, and you open up and it was that orangey red. I was like, I love that cover. And she's like, I hated that cover. I go to this. I love this panel because I love talking about the books versus the show, and although I love the show. And I go to an Outlander retreat every year, and all we do is talk about one book of Outlander. So you spend the whole weekend discussing the book. So this is one of my favorite panels.
Okay. So we're going to get started. What we'll do is we'll ask the panelists to give their thoughts, and then if anyone in the audience has anything that they would like to contribute, just raise your hand and speak loudly. I'm not sure if we have a mic to go in the room, but it's kind of small, so if you just project a little bit, we should be able to hear you. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So, ninth book. We finally got a ninth book. Go Tell the People I Am Gone in December. What did you love about the book?
I loved getting into the nitty-gritty of the war. I loved the return of Ulysses. Holy crap. Did you expect that? I didn't expect that. I did not expect that he would return the way that he did, and that he would be such a jackass. Wow. But then I thought about it. If you think about Ulysses' situation and the fact that he was a slave and he had to go on the run, the deep-seated bitterness makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, and all he had to do, to protect Jocasta, too, all the things that he's done,
and what did Jocasta do? What did Jocasta do for him? When they left, I was like, so what did Jocasta? What are you going to do to help him out here? Yeah. And I don't know that anything was done. I don't remember. So if somebody does, please refresh me. But that was probably the most surprising thing, and I loved it. I actually went back and read it again because I was like, wow, there is so much going on here.
I haven't read the book, I just kinda know what's going on in general with, big spoiler, like Jamie dying and then being brought back to life and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't surprised as my friends and I discussed that just because Jamie's always dying, right? But the evolution of Claire's ability to heal into something a little more magical, like,
Master Raymond.
Thank you. I was like, France, Purpura, Master Raymond. The moment Master Raymond healed her, and when she was in France at the Purpura, I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't.
It's
That
the
was
blue
not,
light.
I mean, the blue light. She was so in the fever that you could almost say, oh, she imagined that, and he just pulled the piece of placenta that was left and causing the fever. But I was like, that is totally coming into play later. And there's allusions to Claire becoming the White Witch, like as her hair color changes and being magical. So as that sort of fleshed out, I was like, yeah, that seems right.
Well, if you remember too, Master Raymond said he called her Madonna because her aura was blue like his own. So to me, that was a huge, like lead in that this is where Claire is headed.
It's amazing to me how Gabaldon can, like 6 books later, tie that back in, right? So she had to have had an idea as she set the Master Raymond thing up with the blue light, all that kind of things, that down the road she was going to do something with that, even though she took 6 books, like 6,000 pages.
Authors are able to do that.
I think sometimes it's accident, but a lot of times you just have, but no.
She doesn't do it by accident.
No, but I think she probably does have some ideas, like, this is a big plot thread, she probably kind of knew where she was going with that. But I think sometimes authors can have these ones like, oh, we could tie this guy back in, or we could do this, and that would work out great. With that one, I think she had to know, it's just
But that one she did.
It's just so big.
I will tell you though, I was at an author conference where she was, and she said that the way that she leaves dangling plot threads, we all know this, right? You've read the book. I asked her, I'm like, well, what do you do about all those abandoned plot lines or things that you she goes, oh, I just wait until I need something, and I'm like, oh, what's left? We just pull that over and it goes into the next book.
See, so it really isn't always planned. Like, there is some sense of getting out of the way the story is what a lot of authors call it. Like, you let the story happen and you get out of the way, and then you can kind of pull it together later.
I do think you're right though, that the blue light and her being like Master Raymond and coming into her power, I think that's planned. I think that's
it's too big,
it's
too big.
And it was kind of like you said, not obvious, but the clues were there. If you know where to look, the clues were there. It's like
it's the surprising yet inevitable.
Yes.
Because it was so long ago that it happened, but then once it happens, you're like, oh, got it. Because she writes it in such a way that you remember Master Raymond, you remember that moment, and it kind of comes clear.
Right. You have a comment over here?
Well, and with Nyaweny, when she said when her hair turns white, and that was what, book 4? They allude to that again, so she keeps bringing it up over and over and over again. So that was 100% planned from the start.
Well, and it's funny how she's dropping him like, book, just once.
She loves to do that, be like, oh, here's a little tidbit right here, oh, here's a little right here, because you have to put in so much effort to read her books. But she does pay out on these little things everywhere.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments about, anybody else want to talk about what they loved about the book?
One of the things that I liked, it wasn't really a character, was talking to bees. Consequently, when the book came out, a magazine from our town came out, not knowing about Outlander, and they talked about the history of people talking to bees.
Oh,
And
really?
telling them stories and letting them carry what has happened to families. And I was reading, I have 2 beekeepers in my neighborhood, and I was telling them about that. One knew all about it and the other one did not. So we've sort of started talking to bees in our neighborhood, telling them what's going on, what you do at work, I'm getting a new car, blah, 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 blah. But there is a long history of people talking to bees.
That is such a
giving them
magical
the information.
coincidence. That's
And
so
the magazine was
interesting.
beautiful. There was a beautiful bumblebee on it, and it was about just where the history came from, how people do it. And it was almost like it was this kind of a sideline in Go Tell the Bees, but it was
actually a thing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful how she sends that history through John Quincy Myers. Like, he's such a very matter-of-fact character, but this is such a almost metaphysical thing about, oh, you gotta tell the bees or they get angry.
Right.
They're not happy if you don't share with them.
Anyway, I like that.
That's so interesting. Okay. What did you hate?
have to think about that one for a minute.
Anybody else in the audience? Now, I
What?
haven't read these, but I have heard some people, you know, you hear people talk about it, you have some people who loved it, there were some people who complained about it, they said that there were some, I don't know if it was continuity issues, or they said that they felt like the editing could have been a little bit better, but there were some people who complained a little bit about it.
So
You're
this,
nodding your head.
Yeah, I noticed some continuity issues as
Okay.
well. It was not just those people.
Was it big stuff?
I don't believe so. It was been a few months since I read it, but no, there were a few little things like, but I thought this happened here. I thought it happened to that person, or I thought it was this time before that, and then it's just like, okay, I mean, she has such a large universe. I guess I can't be super mad at her.
Yeah, but still.
But I feel like that's what editors are for.
Right,
So,
right.
Can I be an editor then?
I mean,
Because
when you
I'd love
were
someone to help
when you were
with
at that
this.
level, like,
Yeah.
that
you
should,
know what's
yeah.
funny though? Like, because I keep story Bibles for my own stories, and I forget stuff, and fans will be like, no, Lisa, and I'm like,
All the
and I
time.
do the same thing with like the Diana books or other books that I'm fans of, and I'm like, how is it so different when you're an author versus when you're a fan? Because I can remember stuff about Outlander, and I'm like, oh, what color did I make my character's eyes?
I think it's because we go through so many drafts sometimes, right?
Maybe,
So
maybe that's it. I don't know what it
any
is.
novel that I write, I think about for a couple months. I do the first draft, I do the second draft, I take a break, I do a third draft, I send it to beta readers and editors, I get it back, I do a fifth draft, I finalize, and I'm done. And I think you see the process through, well, this needs to move over here, or this person didn't say that, or you have to change the war, and you move things around that you sort of kind of forget, like, what did I do? Like, I can't remember. And then there's all these stories in your head that you never tell, and then you forget that you didn't tell them. So you're like, what did I tell you? So I think that's part of it.
That's totally fair.
I think, did anyone see Diana's post right before Bees actually went to print, where she detailed very,
Yes.
very specifically about what her editing process is, and, you know, getting it from manuscript to print. I read that post and I was like, I will never be an author. It's so much work. Like, she took a picture and the manuscript stack was like this, and she was like, this is after 5 edits. And it's just so interesting, because hearing you detail that process and reading what Diana wrote, and to think that somehow continuity issues still kind of slip through. I can't imagine having to have that kind of organized brain to sit there and go through all of that. Because like we said, these books are massive.
I mean, they're probably like 500,000 words.
Oh yeah, well if you read, and just as an author, and my editors cannot read more than twice. Because if you read more than twice, well no, but your brain starts to fill in what you expect to see, and that may not be what's there.
Yeah, you have to get brand new, like fresh eyes, preferably people outside your genre for certain types of edits, so that you get that cleanliness.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
even then, things get through.
Yeah. So yeah, she's got these like 500,000 to 600,000 word tomes. I write like 100,000, and that's hard enough. So you can't imagine like the editing process for manuscripts aside. It's crazy. But I heard some complaints that there's the continuity, but also just like a little bit slower plot line. Did anyone think
Yes.
that? Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what that was a consistent complaint I've heard as I kind of looked at what people were saying about it. That it's moving a little bit slower now. Like, well, I mean, you're 9 books in.
So
There's
that's
only
where-
so much you can do to torture your characters.
Yes, that's where I am. I'm like, okay, she says it's only one more book, and people are like, what? Only one more book? I'm like, 9 books? She's gonna have probably close to 3 million words by the time she's done with this.
Oh wait, I think probably even more than
I'm
that.
think so.
pretty sure she's over that by now.
Yeah, I do. I really do.
I'm not good at guestimating the words
Yeah.
for the
Especially
pages.
if you throw in like, all of
The
the
novellas.
novellas
And the
Yes.
Outlander's Companion
and Lord John Gray
Oh gosh.
books.
So how many things can you like screw with your character? I mean, it's really, you know, after a while it gets tiring. I will tell you the thing that I hated was the death of Amy. Like I cried. I cried at that because I was like, God, she went through, we're seeing it in the show where she's like, hey, Roger, and there's issues there, but she finally was happy, things were going well with Bobby, and then, boom, she's dead. I was like, couldn't you have killed somebody else?
What happens to your kids?
They are taken in.
Bobby is their
Yeah,
father.
Bobby is their father.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. Oh, that's
But
right.
all the women like band together to help Bobby because Bobby's like, I'm sorry.
Like what? Excuse me. Okay.
Anybody else wanna talk
This
about
lady right here.
anything that they did not like about the books?
Referring back to the continuity thing, I have read several series of books where there are 5 or more, mostly more, and all of them have continuity things. It's just impossible to not. I mean, if you read, McCaffrey or Valdemar or, Tolkien, they all have little continuity things, and we just
I think
either
that's
have to
fair.
live with them or you just give up the series. 'cause
I have
it's gonna
beta
be
readers.
there.
I have beta readers specific to that. I say they're my wiki people, so they uphold my wiki, and so I send them a manuscript before I publish, and I say just double check this, and they'll come back and be like, that scene happened differently than your reference, or it was a different place, or didn't this happen? And so it's there, and then later I've published a book and I find out, oh crap, that was not that way.
Oh, this.
But you try as hard as you can.
You do.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a Scott Denton, and he's been a Scott Denton and a Scott Trenton. Because I changed his name a couple of times, and so he's escaped through like 2 books where he was both Denton and Trenton.
I have a character that's Nicholas with just a C, and then in the next 4 books he's Nicholas with a CH. Like, I don't know how I missed that.
Because they're both spelled right.
I know, it's
They're
funny.
both spelled right.
I mean, I know people in real life that are like, I want to be like this now, and
That's true.
maybe that didn't work out.
I'm gonna change my name.
It's still nice.
Yes.
Back to the discussion of bees and the plot moving slower, I think it also has to do with I think it's a trend over the past couple of books, and I think it's because of her introduction of William's perspective, especially. Because you're covering the same timeline,
But so many
essentially,
people.
from different perspectives, and so that makes the plot move slower, because I think that ties into, I saw a lot of complaints of people saying they were so sick of William's perspective.
Yep.
I know.
Oh, I love Williams.
I
I
know,
love
I know.
Williams'
I think
perspective.
But that was I heard that too
I heard it a
consistently.
lot.
It's like
I
I wish
think-
they got rid of William or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because a lot of people just like really like Claire, and I'm like, well, there's only so much of Claire's perspective we're gonna get. Like, she's
Yeah.
just chilling on the farm sometimes.
Yeah.
But also the family is expanding, so, you know, family is a big thing for Claire because she didn't have a lot of it, so the fact that she's got these precious people in her world, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, so like I like it, but I think that's why a lot of people felt like it was moving slower.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's the same thing in any other book, you know, completely different genre, but Rick Riordan's books where he's got like 6 different perspectives, and you're all going over the same timeline. It's gonna feel slow because of
You have to move a lot forward, and yeah, definitely.
And then, kind of when you have the show, even when you have all of these different perspectives, you have all the actors who can simultaneously
Right.
do all of these scenes together, so
Yeah, I
you
do
can
think
fit
it's-
in an hour,
I think it's
but
gonna be really
in
interesting.
reality, you've been sitting there for an entire month just reading about this one party.
Well, too, I think you have a difference between book and show. So
Huge
in a
difference.
show, it's given to you, and you sort of can check out and just watch what's happening. And there's music, and there's drama, and there's beautiful imagery. But in the book, you're creating that in your head, so you're investing a lot more effort and time. So you feel like you want more payoff. I think that the film has a level up over books that way.
Yeah, I wish we had a map in the book, because, you know, especially because everyone is moving around
Yeah.
so
She's
often.
like, I need a map in my house to move the checker pieces
I read
around.
a certain review of Outlander, and it said that it was talking about how everyone is taking journeys in the 9th book, specifically, like, everyone is going places and coming back and going places, and I literally would have to like look up a map of like 1700s America to be like, okay, which way is he going now?
It's interesting too that you say that because you think about, you know, 200, 300 years ago, that people stayed stationary and stayed where they were, but these books show you that people are consistently moving. You know, part of it is because of war, but part of it is because they have a lot of things going on and you have to go here to get this kind of thing. Like I'm thinking about how Bree goes and gets the gunpowder. You know, like there are places that you have to go to get certain things, and it puts to rest that idea that you stay on the farm and that's where you stay because you take care of all of your own stuff. And they didn't do that. Like
No.
she doesn't have her characters do that.
The scale is different though.
Yeah.
What feels like a long distance to them is a short distance to us.
Yeah, a quick trip to Savannah was like, they were actually moving there for like a couple months or
Mhm.
whatever.
Well, they had to follow the food, right? I mean, they had like, you know, when the the crickets or whatever came in, and, you know, they're trying to save their crops. If that had destroyed, they might have had to move to somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, like, they're following food in a different way too.
Let's see, what made you laugh, what made you cry? Like, were there any standout moments in the book?
Well, crying was definitely Amy. I was so sad. But I love, and I snicker, I love the interactions between Bree and William. Like, they're very tentative as they circle around each other, but they both have the same sense of humor, and they're both sarcastic and very dry, and it pops out occasionally. But they're not really like full on, like when Bree is talking to Jamie or Bree's talking to her mom, because it's still very tentative. I love their interactions.
Anyone else?
Well, I like the Ian storyline with his son, but Swiftest Lizard, whatever, yeah. Anyway, and the acceptance of that, but I still have a question, is he truly Ian's son? It's sort of vague.
I think he is.
It's hypothesized that he is, but there's no way to know for sure without a genetic test that they can't do there, but they think that he is based off of context.
Which means that Emily kicked him out too soon.
Probably.
But anyway, but I did like that new buddy relationship and taking him in and Rachel accepting the child. I thought that was a very nice story.
That is a wonderful piece of Ian's healing. Like, I talked about this in the BritTrack, how Ian, like, his experience with women, he had his wonderful mother, but she was no slouch. And then he got kidnapped. You know, he had one experience in the brothel, and then he got kidnapped, and then it was Galus, who was crazy and scary, and then he had Emily, and Emily, yeah, like,
Forgot about Galus,
yeah, that was traumatic.
That was horrible.
And then he had Emily, and he loved her, and she put him out. And that is not standard for that time frame. Like, if somebody got put out, it was not the man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that was a completely different mindset for his Eurocentric mind. So I love that he has met Rachel, and there has been healing. Like in the last book, when he took off the armband, like, that is one of my weepy moments, because he's like, I'm ready to move forward. And then the closure, like closing the circle with his son, excellent moment.
And really sad moment when Rolo died.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my God! Did you have a comment on that?
I was gonna say, I think the scenes with Jenny are always funny.
Yes.
I'm excited about that.
Oh, and Jenny and her budding romance. You're like, go girl, go.
I think I saw another hand somewhere. No? Okay.
I mean,
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I have an odd theory. Okay, when twins are born and Claire saves the little girl, you know, okay, that kind of brings me back to when Faith was born. I know that Claire holds Faith, and she sees the baby after she's dead. But how long did Claire hold her, and are they sure they really buried Faith?
they cover that.
Faith was dead, but sorry, that's a not nice way to say it.
No, yeah, I mean,
By the time Claire was awake enough to hold her, I think
So she really
Faith was like,
realized.
Well, no, it's a theory that Fanny is her granddaughter. Like, they
Yeah.
postulate that in the book, that they think that
Yes.
Fanny
Yeah.
is her actual granddaughter, that Faith lived, that Raymond brought Faith back to life, and she was raised in France, and then what's the other girl?
Jane.
Jane,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what
the
the
Jane and
theory that's been
Fanny
going
are
around.
her grandchildren. They go over that in the book.
I mean, I remember that. I just thought it was like
I thought
her
Claire,
desperately hoping.
I mean,
thought
that's
Claire-
entirely possible.
Okay.
but I thought Claire, I don't remember for sure, but in the books, I thought Claire held her for like hours. Like, she had
I
her
thought
all
she held her all
like,
day.
the sun was
Like the whole
tracking.
day.
I feel like there were like shadows growing before they could like pry the baby out of her arms.
I don't
And then they were there at the headstone with Jamie. I mean, yes, it probably maybe
She did
could
allude
have,
to it,
but
though.
she was really
They
dead.
alluded to that,
Hmm?
that it could have been possible that,
Well, with Master Raymond. remember?
Yeah.
and also think about that time period, a lot of times, you know, people might not have been completely dead.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like there was the, in this show, they do it really well, where the one lady like woke up as they were doing the funeral. And then she had the aneurysm.
It was Hiram Poppy's mother-in-law.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But she did die. She
She
just
did,
had,
right, like
she had
minutes
white
later.
died.
Cause she had an aortic aneurysm.
Yes.
Yeah. I was a nurse before I was an author, and I was like, how is she gonna explain this?
No,
She did great.
I thought that also, and then I was like, no, she held faith all day. But I was like, you know, I've been hanging on to what did Frank know for like 20 years. So if anything is, and as the books go on, I'm like, see, Frank knew. Like the theories are coming true because Frank knew a lot more than we originally thought. You know, in like the first 3 books or so. It's possible.
Well,
I mean, with Diana, you just don't. Right. Now there's blue light healing everyone. So.
Well, and two, the book he wrote that he left for Jamie. That Frank wrote that he left for Jamie. Like he knew so much.
Yeah, the novel, like detailing all stuff, and Jamie's even in it, and Brianna brings it back.
Yeah, he needs to go back in time and take an ancestry DNA test.
That'd be serious witchcraft.
I know, right?
But one of mine was Jenny and how Jenny helped Claire deal with her rape with the man. Like Jenny is just such a hard hitting character. I love that she came back over and got to experience her life after what horribly happened to her husband Ian. But Jenny has been such an integral part of book 9. I felt like, I mean, she wasn't, you know, the main focus, but she drove a lot of the story points. Not only with Claire, but with Jamie and with Ian. And didn't she even do something for William at one point? I don't remember. But
That was 2 books ago when she met William.
My bad. You're right. But she's become such a hard hitting drive for the books. I love her catalysm.
She was one of my favorites in the earlier books, and when they went to the Americas, I was like, oh, take Jenny. She's one of my favorites. So I'm excited to have her back.
I love though that Jenny was so angry when Ian died. You know, she was so angry, like really a deep theory. I'm really happy to see that she has been able to put that to rest for herself, you know, in some way, and move forward. Like she's very pragmatic. I don't think she could hang on to that grudge forever. Although I think she could. She's a strong enough person that she could hold a grudge very easily. But that she let it go so that she could experience this new part of life.
Yeah, I think it's stronger to let it go. I think that's what makes her such a great and interesting character. So it's nice to see those relationships like a little bit.
Well, I think Diana has to have healing happen because she put so much trauma. Like the season 6 was kind of hard to watch. So, and the book, right? Like it's just, that's a hard one because there's so much darkness with Malva and the gang rape and all that stuff. When they finally started healing Claire and she tells Jamie what's going on, I was like, this came none too soon because you're about to, like, this was almost too depressing to watch. So she has to have those moments of progression for the characters, or else it's horrible to read. You need that.
Any other comments? All right, let's move on. Let's talk about William.
I love it.
What did you think about the relationship between William and Brianna?
So I love it. I think what I think is interesting is that Bree is there and she is waiting, but she is not pushing. And I think it's because she also understands the idea of finding a father that you didn't know was your father. My thing with William is, and maybe this is my innate snottiness, I don't know what it is. I'm like, dude, you are the Earl of Ellesmere. You need to suck it up, take what's yours. You know, he's busy. I'm not. No, you are. Just do it. And that makes me a little bananas. Because in my opinion, it is the short-sightedness of youth. Because in this world, you need resources to move ahead. If you abandon your resources and declare yourself, a bastard, that's idiotic. So I'm waiting for him to get out of his own way on that one.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That's okay, so we're gonna take a pause real quick, let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your Outlander experience, and if you, have any kind of works or anything out there that you wanna plug. you can do
No,
that.
I don't have anything. I'm Jill Reeser, and, let's see, I got introduced to Outlander late. A friend of mine in Tennessee recommended the book, so I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll try it. And basically went through everything that was available at the time, which I think was only Fiery Cross. So then I was with everybody else waiting 5 years. I've never actually read the books. I do Kindle or I do audio for Outlander, and I've listened to them at least, well, I've actually lost count, probably more than 15 or 20. But, I'm a book fan, not a show fan. My apologies if anybody's a major show fan here. The show's okay, and I'm hoping in a few years I can look back when I watch it and enjoy it more with the separation. I do that with Harry Potter now, so maybe it'll happen with Outlander. I'm a major book fan, so. I'm a member about the Sassenachs Sisterhood on Facebook, which is a fairly active group. And, again, I'm very sorry for being late.
It happens.
Yeah, life after I can be thought happens.
No, I have to pull a corner.
Unfortunately, real life doesn't pause for Dragon Con.
Or Outlander.
Very true.
So, since you're here, we're discussing the, ninth book. So, tell us, what did you love, what did you hate?
First time I hated it. It was very disjointed for me. I felt like it was a very good illustration of how she writes, which is in small vignettes, and then she strings them together. Felt like the stringing together was a little bit more choppy this time. And I missed a lot because I was rushing through it. Second time, majorly more appreciation for it, and third time even more. Still a little bit choppier than the previous books, but still a lot of stuff in there, and I enjoyed it a lot. It revealed a lot about different characters. Only one I'm not real caring about is William, because he's like that Shatner on Star Trek. Every female he runs into, he falls in love with, and he can't. He's not a very discerning person when it comes to women. But otherwise, I enjoyed it. I feel like we're finally seeing Claire come into her full power and everything else, so I've enjoyed that.
Okay, and about the, relationship between William and Brianna, what do you think?
I like it. I think that we're gonna see a lot more of that in the next book, because already her snippets are showing that they're spending time together and getting to know each other. He already feels protective over her. So I think he wants that relationship, he wants that connection, and she definitely does, so. I think we have something like that to look forward to.
Well, I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit because of time. So let's talk about Ian's journey. So, I'm going by, Crystal's notes. Crystal was supposed to be the moderator this morning, but she couldn't make it. So she talks about, his situation with his son and his ex-wife, which we've already, discussed. So, how do you think that storyline came about? Like, do you think that was something that just came out of thin air? Did it make sense the way that it was written? And I know that there have been a couple of comments about whether or not that's really his son or not. So, how do you feel about that, Amy? Because I think we touched upon it just a little bit.
I love this, and I think that like I said, I think it's a full circle, because Ian was really damaged by what happened with Emily. Not only what happened with Emily, but losing his children. So for me, like, that is a really satisfying closure of that circle. You know, Emily is happy and has moved on. Ian is happy because we all love Rachel. At least I hope we all love Rachel. Yes. I love her. I think she's a fabulous character. And these are two people that experienced a lot of hurt together, and now they're able to move forward, and there's closure. So for me, Ian is finally happy, because Ian really has been dealing with trauma since he was kidnapped.
Yeah.
You know, he has not been trauma-free, except for, I think, some happy times, a top period of time with Emily before she started having, you know, miscarriages, he hasn't been trauma free. I'm really happy for him that he is at a place where trauma is not a daily thing for him.
Well, and he couldn't really settle either. Like when he lost Emily, he went away. Like he's been moving through families and situations, and now
Mhm.
he's finally like he can settle in and just be somewhere in a good spot, which is great.
That's probably true since he was kidnapped and was stolen.
Yeah, like he's like you said, he's gone from trauma to trauma.
Next.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's also accepted on the Ridge as both a Scottish man and an Indigenous man. Like he, you know, his duality, because he is now, you know, a citizen of two nations really, is accepted. Maybe people look at it suspiciously, like, and I'm thinking about the fisher folk who are a continual problem. They are.
They're my biggest headache.
Oh, they're so, like, just boot them. But
I know, go away. Just go away.
I was so happy when Jamie finally said, you know what, you're out. You're out. And then all the women were like, I'm sorry, what? And they said they will never do anything again. Like I've been ready for him to boot them practically since they showed up. So, they're so annoying. But the fact that Ian is accepted there, I think that also helps too.
I don't think all the fisher folk were involved in that though, because obviously Crombie is trying to create ties between him and Jamie, and he was the head of the fisher folk.
He tries, yeah.
He tried. Well, he's come around though, because he was really.
He was a pain, but he wasn't a loyalist versus anything. I mean, he was just a pain.
Yeah. He's very adversarial.
Yes, he was.
But
Well,
at that
for one
time-
thing, they're Protestant.
Right.
And all Protestants in those days looked on Catholics with suspicion, and there's still some that do today. Look at Kennedy. I mean, that was a major problem. So that hasn't changed really. But Crombie and probably other people in their group, they're not all loyalists. They're trying to walk the line, actually, is what they're trying to do, which is what Jamie's been trying to do for a while. But anyway, I mean, not all the fisher folk are bad, but a lot of them are.
Problematic.
As a whole, they're
As a whole, they're
Yes, they are
problematic.
definitely a problem.
Yes.
Any thoughts, comments from the audience? Were you about to say something? No. Okay, let's move on. So we talked a little bit about Claire's blue light. We see that it's starting to make an appearance, and it not only gives her the ability to heal, but to bring people back from near death. What is everyone's thoughts about that? Now, I know we discussed it a little bit. And, Amy, you wanna give us your?
Me?
I mean, no, I'm sorry. Jill.
Well, you know, Neowani told her at when they met that someday when her hair turned white, she would come into her full power, so everybody's been waiting for it. She's seen hints of it. But, I think the first time was when she tried to, keep Malvo's baby from dying. But it didn't work, either because she didn't have enough power, or there just wasn't enough there to bring back, I don't know. But the twins, when she saved one of the twins, I think that baby actually was dead. And she brought him back, and then from there on, you know, when she finally brings Jamie back, that's a big deal. You know, she's probably, I guess at this point, in her full power, and her hair has turned white, so it'll be fascinating to see what else she's capable of doing going forward.
I think that's what I'm most excited about, is where in book 10 is Gavalden gonna take this, right? Like, what is she gonna be able to do? Where does this end? You know, and how does she come into it fully, and what does that look like? I'm excited to see.
I'm excited and I'm a little nervous. Like, this does put it in like an interesting spin, you know, with her, what she's done with the twin and what she did with Jamie. It puts an interesting spin on what might have happened with Faith when we were talking about that earlier. But I worry because if you remember when Jamie got bit by the rattlesnake and he told Roger, if I died, they'll kill her. Like, what happens if Jamie dies before Claire and Claire is now in her full power? Like, I worry about that. Like, does that mean Claire has to go first? Because if Jamie dies, she's got to get the hell out. Because, like, it's been, you know, she doesn't, except for that one time, she doesn't really come right out and say, oh, well, they think you're a total witch, and if it wasn't for Jamie holding back the, you know, the suspicious tide, you would have been strung up. But it's there, and I worry, like, what happens when she comes to her full power and somebody actually sees it?
I think it depends on the situation they're in at that time, though, right? Like, I don't know. I think you're right. I think it puts her in greater danger depending on what's going on and where they are and how she uses
Well, she's not real obvious about it, then you go back and read the book and you're like, holy crap. Jamie's basically saying, get rid, like, if I go, you gotta get out.
Yeah.
You know, and that hit me, like, that was the second or third time I read it, and I was like, oh my god.
The second sad thing is she's coming into her power at the, like, second to last book, right? So, like, we're
Well,
finally
it kinda
seeing
makes
it.
sense though, I mean, she's getting older, most people
Yeah.
get their full, knowledge, experience, wisdom, all that stuff, it comes with age.
Yeah.
So it kinda makes sense that it would come towards the end.
She has like a book basically to show it to us, and then it'll.
That book's gonna be 1,000 pages, you know that.
I know.
It's
Well,
gonna be 1,000
it'll be the biggest at least. Yeah.
So I was at the panel for your last year, and I remember we were talking about the overall overreaching story of Outlander, which unfortunately the show has failed to really touch on at all, which makes me sad. So we had talked about last year about how the full cycle, that if Claire goes back in time, it would end the cycle of her repetitive going back in time and being with Jamie of the cycle of time. But if Claire dies first, then and she dies in the past, then that would just perpetuate the cycle. I know you were at the panel last year.
I was just thinking, this is so cool. They were like, oh yeah, the panel last year.
Yeah. We were both there last year, but
Oh,
I don't,
you were?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know if Jill, you guys know.
I don't know if y'all remember that
Yeah.
discussion,
Oh, okay.
that part about the full overreaching story, because I
There's
hadn't
vague. It's vague.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. When I was reading that if she stays back in time, then the cycle would perpetuate. But what would be the point of ending the cycle? I guess was where I was confused on.
You mean the cycle of her like going back in time and then going home?
Yes.
Okay. So we're saying that she needs to complete the cycle by going back to the future?
Yes,
Or,
that was
okay.
what was discussed last year.
Or what would happen if she
And
didn't?
that was
kind
why
of
I was
like-
confused. is
That's
what
I
would happen.
remember talking about how time travel is so wonky and different for every writer, right? Like some writers come up with problems and I'm like, what? Like never would have thought of that. And then someone like sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. I vaguely remember the discussion, but I don't know. I think I don't think I ever pictured Claire dying in the future. I always just pictured her.
Well, and
I
that was
have
why
too.
that discussion was weird to me, because I've always felt like the whole point was her and Jamie being together, and there was really no other point whatsoever in the books to me. It was their relationship, what they brought to the people in their lives, and her power.
Yeah.
Like, her power is such an integral part, and I'm so glad we're finally getting to see it after all this time. But yes, what is the point of her power? What's she going to accomplish in book 10 that's going to make such a huge difference? And I don't know if it's keeping everyone else alive and then sacrificing herself or Jamie, or
It'll be interesting.
yeah.
I don't know about sacrifice, but I think if you look at the number of people that she's kept alive, that has significantly altered the future. And even if it's just small, like the people on the ridge or the people that she comes in
her and
contact
Brianna
with.
had that discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good. You know what else I was thinking with the growth of her power too is, she tries to rescue Amalva's baby and it fails in the books, but they didn't show that in the show. Right?
I couldn't watch season 6. I was like, you guys aren't doing anything anymore. I'm out.
It was interesting that they didn't show that to me because it's so integral. Like it's so important, and Diana speaks into the show. So I'm just. It's one of those
She
things
can
I'm
only
like,
tell
why
them
did-
so much, and they can only do
Right.
what they
But
want.
it's like, why didn't you show that? That's going to be major later, and maybe they just thought, well, that failed attempt isn't as important as the drama they were mostly pushing behind it with her accusation and all that stuff. But
That's why I'm out of the show, is they kept missing all the integral parts of the overarching story.
Right.
I'm like, you're just
Well,
trying to tell a love story. You're not trying to tell the
Season
whole...
6 they had to cut short too because
really?
of the pandemic.
Oh.
So they
You know,
had
there's
said
17
There's 10
episodes coming.
episodes for the next season.
for the next season they promised more because of the pandemic and how difficult it was to film. Then they had
Also,
to make.
Claire's pregnancy.
Yes, and Claire
That
was
was causing
pregnant.
a
So
lot.
when
I
like
know that.
Malva was dying, the actress from Malva, there's an interview where she said when she was doing her death scene, Claire was pregnant, and it was just an interesting scene because she's so emotional and she's crying and she's pregnant anyway and she's kneeling at her side and Malva's dead and she was just talking about how it was to work with Catriona and anyway. So yeah, I think maybe it was just like we can't emphasize that because we have to stick with the drama that moves it forward. But I was sad that progression isn't put in there, you know.
Well, something that, I don't know.
Anne Marie, I just said, like, for Hollywood effects though, if you add that in from the book, it's not gonna be as dramatic as it would be on television.
because it's
It
mostly
might be
happening in her
confusing.
head.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
how do you
That's
show, like,
true.
how do you show that on screen without it being like weird, really bad special effects of like a blue light around the baby or something like that?
Well, but they didn't really, I guess in the show, they didn't really show that with Master Raymond either,
No,
did they?
yeah.
So-
It was like a weird montage.
But then what are they gonna do?
Right?
That's the thing though, but then what are they gonna do? How do you tackle the blue light, like,
Yeah,
later when she's
how do you show
manifesting?
something that's happening within someone's head? So I'm interested to see, I wanna know
Well, they
how
should have
they're
figured it out.
Cause it's probably gonna be a little,
They're gonna
sadly
change it.
so over the top, which might be like a turn off.
Or they're just like,
I don't know, I think they could have done it, I really do, with special effects, I think there had to be a way that they could show a blue light as Master Raymond healed her,
Keep in
and then.
mind that that blue light costs money.
Oh, but they have to be
talked
pouring
about it.
so
She
much
could've talked
into
about it to
things.
Jamie afterwards, like, this is
Right.
what I experienced when I tried to do this.
There's so many ways around this that they're pouring so much money into that show that, I don't know.
They're gonna have to do something too, because like her grief over Malva, I talked about this the other day, her grief over Malva is a continuing thing, like she, you know, like there was a lot of anger in what was going on with Malva in the show, and they did, like when Malva came out with her accusations in the book, Claire was angry, but she was also mourning,
Yeah,
because
she's
this was someone that
devastated.
she loved, she actually loved Malva.
Well, she
And-
saw a lot of herself in Malva.
Yes.
And so she was trying to give to Malva what she didn't have,
You
absolutely.
attach to your mentees.
Yes.
Like, this is mentoring her. So
Mhm.
She was a girl in that time showing the drive and excitement and determination that Claire once had, and to have that and to have a girl that would be brave enough to foster that and then such,
And then,
oh,
like,
I was like,
dagger to your
the
heart.
trauma of losing a reputation, like, this hurts.
Well, they've kind of moved that to Marsley in the show, like
Yeah.
Marsley is kind of like her
Which I thought was interesting.
mentee.
I liked that.
You had a comment here,
And then you.
Yes, I did. I was thinking back to season 1, and I have not read any of the books. I just started watching Outlander this summer. Fell in love with it. But in season 1, I noticed there was, when Frank was introducing Claire to where the burial site was, where that castle was, how scared she felt when she walked into that room. It's almost like she was having deja vu.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if Jamie were to pass away, maybe she does go back to the future, but back to where she began with Frank. And maybe that's how it ends, I don't know. But there was also a ghost that followed Claire and stood and watched her.
Oh,
through that.
that's right, the
Oh,
Highland Ghost.
the
That's
Jamie
my favorite,
Ghost.
yes. That's like the other biggest one, right, with what did Frank know, and when does Jamie show up as the ghost? She promised that would be solved. by
Yeah,
book
she
10.
did, she said that by
In the
book 10, you will understand.
Yes. There's a lot of theories about that, like Jamie is waiting, like I read one fan theory where he promised he would like always wait for her, so some people are postulating that his ghost has been waiting for her for hundreds of years and he found her then, but that spurs all sorts of other questions, like, so I'm like,
Particularly
oh, that's a
if it's
rabbit
young
hole.
Jamie.
Yeah, I don't know, that was, cause it was a Highlander for sure, and now he's in, like, anyway, there's all sorts of bridging that she's gonna be doing for sure.
Okay, you had a comment.
It's been so long, I don't remember names, but we can go back to, when Roger went back in time and he found the healer doctor who did the blue light. on
Yes.
August
Yes.
Waller. And also there is that little tidbit in, I'm sorry, one of the novellas, the one about Master Raymond and.
Saint Germain.
Yes, Saint Germain, and when Master Raymond mentions his children, who all have the
Yep.
blue light. But
Oh,
my
that's
point is that the doctor was not particularly old, I don't remember,
He was
I
like
sort of-
40s, he's,
40s,
like,
yeah.
the way she wrote him made him seem like
Yeah,
40s,
in his
middle-agey.
40s or so, and of course, he was sort of hiding out because he is a healer kind of thing and doesn't wanna do anything dramatic.
He was also hiding lust for Galus.
Yes, well, anyway, we never know what happens to him in Galus, but besides that, he saved Roger's ancestor, who I
Mhm.
really think was going to die, and healed him with the blue light, and I think that that's Roger's first thing about the blue light, but I don't necessarily think coming into your power means you have to be old.
Maybe it was just a Claire thing.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
it
know,
could
but I
be a
just thought I'd
strength.
remand people that
They all
the
have
blue light
different
was there.
talents, Saint Germain's talent was to be able to, he was trying to get women pregnant to reproduce what he could do. So he would get a woman pregnant and then he would check to make sure she was carrying a baby, and if it was the right baby, and if it wasn't, he would just discard her and move on to the next girl. That's how.
Lovely.
He was really a loathsome creature.
He really is.
That's great.
He was
Such a
misusing
stand-up
his
character.
power. He was
She's really
misusing his
good
power.
at just nefarious characters you hate.
Okay, we have 10 minutes, so let's move on. Do we think that some of the future that the Mackenzies brought back with them are gonna cause problems?
Merc Manuel. I think that Merc Manuel's gonna get her in trouble. That's got way too much stuff in it that's gonna look like, you know, where did that come from? She's telling people it came from Scotland, but.
Well, what do we think about the idea that, what the heck is his name? He's the double agent. He switched sides, like, from the Continentals.
Richardson.
Thank you, Richardson, I couldn't remember his name. Like, that Richardson actually was Rob Cameron,
Yep.
or Rob Cameron's friend.
No,
'cause
it's
they
Rob
came-
Cameron's friend, the one
Rob
that
Cameron's friend that
exactly
came after the
opposite.
gold.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? So, you know, someone had plastic surgery in the 60s, early 70s, and then came back to get the gold.
Actually, his primary purpose is to stop the revolution from stopping, because he doesn't want America to win.
No, that's true.
Because his grandmother or great-grandmother was a slave, and he said, you know, England abolished slavery long before we did. So he thinks if England stays in control of the United States, then slavery will be gone much earlier than the revolution was won. So that's his primary purpose of being there, is to make sure that the revolution continues and America loses.
I think that Clara and Jamie have shown that that's just not going to, like,
You can't change things, yeah.
The big stuff, yeah, like the big stuff they are never able to really get a grip on. It just remains so slippery.
Yeah.
I heard a comment out here.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying that I thought that that was a foolish approach. Why not just go find John Lawrence and keep him alive? He was the one who wanted to abolish slavery during the American Revolution.
That'd be a little smaller change.
Right,
Maybe
like,
they could
if you only have to worry about one person instead of trying to navigate all these different things.
Wouldn't
And
be
she put
nearly
it
as
out,
good a
yeah.
story though, would it?
And she pointed out that the British Empire continued slavery in all of their colonies,
Yeah.
Yeah.
long
Much
after
Yeah.
the American abolished slavery.
So, did you think there were any weird story arcs in the book?
Amaranthus is weird.
yes!
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Very weird.
Amaranthus.
That whole
Oh.
storyline is just weird.
I
I
can't
wanna know
decide
where
how I
she's going
feel
with
about
it.
that one. Like, I'm not sure.
I'm not either.
What's the overview of that, just in case?
Amaranthus is married, or,
She's
yeah,
married
she
to Ben.
married one of the sons.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
Benjamin, what's his name, Hal's sons, his heir, actually. Well, he's, a soldier in the British Army, and then he turns,
What was his name? General? He was the general, he's actually now become a revolutionary general.
Ralph something rather, although he says it's Rafe.
And he has a new wife.
Bleecker,
Yes.
General Bleecker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does at the end, but not when she first leaves him. And she basically tries to talk him out of it, and he decides he's gonna turn traitor, and so she leaves him. And they say he died, and she goes to Savannah. He disappears for a while. We don't know what happens to him. William goes to look for him, finds a dead body, but it turns out it wasn't him. So now they're not sure if he's dead or not. And so in this last book, William finds him finally, and he has actually become an American general. And he's pulling for the Americans in this, in the Revolutionary War. So his wife is in Savannah. Hal and John take her and the baby under their protection, and William, of course, falls in love with her, or lust, or whatever. And he's stuck to her now. It's sort of a very sticky relationship. She's kind of I'm
I
not
don't know
really
if that was
sure
gonna
she's even
last.
trustworthy enough to, she kind of lets go, pulls, let's go, kind of, she's very coquettish, I guess you could say. Anyway, it's a weird, the whole story arc is weird.
Anybody else? are there any loose threads that you want to see her tie up in book 10, or what is something that you want to see resolved by book 10, aside from the obvious, who was that mysterious Highland ghost?
And what did
Frank know?
What did Frank know?
What's my brain?
Yes.
I think he knew a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
I wonder if we'll get a chapter from Frank's perspective.
That would be awesome.
That actually would be cool.
I think so many people want that. I think those are the two big ones that most people are looking at.
Yeah, cause Lisa,
Where
you had a
people
lot to
land.
say about that before the panel started.
Oh, I did,
about-
that is my hobby horse. I'm always like, how much did Frank know? Because I believe and have believed for a long time, and it's coming out, that Frank knew everything. And Frank found Jamie and Claire, and he found Bree, and he knows what happened to them. And
Which, tell me a theory about how Frank raised Bree.
yes,
Because we talked about this last year.
Oh, yeah, cause she.
well, you because
and all of that.
this is a Harvard professor, you know, cultured, educated, tenured, the whole nine, and he takes his daughter out shooting and camping and horseback riding in the 60s,
Yeah.
when that's
but-
not how,
In Boston.
in
Yeah.
Boston, where that segment of society, that's not what they did with their daughters. So to me, he was prepping her.
Brianna's also, like Diana describes her as a strong, kind of strapping, not just because she's Jamie's daughter, but she's just strong because of all the activities Frank did with her, the camping, all that kind of stuff. Because she's an engineer, so she also wasn't doing this like really physical job either, but then she had all these skills that made it so easy when she transitioned into like the
I would love to see a chapter from Frank's perspective. I always thought it was very interesting when they found the letters in Lollybrock. Like from a continuity standpoint, as the author, I was going, how did the letters hang out there for like 200 years? Like that, I haven't seen it. So I'm wondering, will we see something like that, where Frank has a letter, or something is found, like something is found, where it explains to us what Frank knew, or you know, Frank's like final words, or.
But like if Frank is in the future, how would they get that if they stay in the past?
I don't, you know, these are questions I don't know the answers to.
I think that Frank is a little, we have to go soon, but I think Frank is a little bit villainized. Because you know that there's got to be a deep bitterness there, but I honestly think he was either trying to save Brianna and prepping her, and I think maybe he was trying to help them. I think he did know, and I think that bothered him their entire marriage, and eventually things just devolved. Because Frank didn't ask for this, right? His wife disappeared, she came back in love with another man and pregnant, and then he finds her in history and she goes back again. Right, so
He didn't have to stay with her though. He didn't have to stay with her.
But he wanted a child so much in the books, right?
He
And
wanted
then-
a child, so even
But
though
then
she
she kept Brianna, so of course he stayed because that was at least a way for him to get a child.
I can understand his feelings and staying with the marriage and the, you know, and the family and everything like that, but the things that he did after that, I don't necessarily forgive him for.
Yeah,
I
he was
agree.
hard on
So,
her.
you know,
yeah.
you
He
can't have.
cheated on her and he was.
I admire him for staying with her and supporting her during the pregnancy and being a father to Brianna and
And
being
the
a good father.
surgery, well, and she was
And
a
support her
surgeon and yeah.
ambitions as well, but as far as our husband is concerned.
He was
no.
terrible.
Well, he was a terrible husband. It wasn't just because of the cheating. I think he knew everything, which is why he was he was very bitter and very cold, and that could and he wouldn't tell Claire because he was not going to admit that she was going to go back and be happy.
But he didn't want her to know because she thought Jamie was dead. So
Yes.
if she went back, then Jamie was alive and he would have lost his
Don't ever try to look it up.
And I feel like
Try to find it.
He-
in the
yeah,
books,
he-
we only ever see Frank from Claire's perspective, and Claire is a little bit self-centered, I feel.
Mhm.
She doesn't consider anybody else's perspective but her own, and so.
I don't know if I would call it self-centered, I just think she was in so much pain that she just really maybe couldn't
Yeah.
consider anything else.
Right.
That's a lot to ask.
And that's what I
for.
like about, Tobias Menzies' portrayal of Frank, is
Yeah.
that he's his own character with his own hurt feelings.
I think the final thing I want to see wrapped up is, I just lost it. It's something with Frank. I'll think of it once we're gone.
Okay, but I'm sorry, we have to close this out now.
Good job.
Thank you so much, guys.
You guys are awesome. This is the best time.
Please make sure to go into the DragonCon app and rate it so that we can have this panel again next year.
And there's a thing up here for charity that you can donate to if you want to drop some extra coins in it.
Thank you so much.